So we have some interesting conversations, while obviously, working in the same building. Like, there's some quite interesting themes that come up.
Yeah.
So
they always seem to sort of synchronize.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
They seem to be studying similar themes at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. So, this podcast, is going to be quite focused on talking about certain things that have been coming up recently, such as shadow work, the ego, the persona, what the persona is or what the persona isn't. I mean, because at the minute there just seems to be so much debate around what that is or what that isn't.
Yeah.
And it seems that not many people actually really know what it is. Yeah. So, would you like to share just a little bit about what you think the persona is? And it is all just perception. It is all around sort of what our own belief systems are, what we've read. The sort of inner work combined with the inner work that we've done on ourselves. Because I think that it's important to know that everybody has different opinions on things, and that a lot of it is experiential. I think that the more experience that you've got doing inner work on yourself, the more it carries weight than just reading about it. So, but what's your experience with the persona? How do or the ego, or how do you see that?
So I see the persona as the social mask. So this is the mask that we show to the world. It's only partially a true reflection of who we actually are, and it's actually an agreement between ourselves and society about who we are. So the persona develops as we are growing, and we're interacting with our parents, our family, interacting socially at school. And what we tend to do is we tend to let go of certain characteristics and keep other characteristics as an attempt to fit in. So yourself, one of the biggest things in school is that struggle to fit in. So sometimes we will let go of essential parts of ourselves to, adapt to what everyone else is doing. But this obviously comes up, it becomes a problem in certain circumstances, i.e., good example would be Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, Mao's China, where people adopting the same behaviours can go to a place that they really didn't want to go.
Mm. So, what I've noticed is that, the persona or the ego, whatever it is that however you want to, see that part of our mind, is that it likes to go to one or the other extremes. That's what I've noticed. Is this something that also you noticed as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's extremes of intellect or extremes of emotion a lot of the time, and then see that a person who's very rational and a person who's very quite irrational, well, them types of people really don't like each other because they hold each other's shadow. Yeah. So if say I have developed as an intellectual person, well, what this may mean is I may have let go of a lot of my emotional, instinctive underpinnings, and I operate from a very rational place. However, that's not whole. To be whole, I'd be operating from an irrational and a rational place, and that obviously that plays out in the world from what we see in the Western world of the different sides of the political sphere. The political sphere, when it works well, you've got both sides will be able to have healthy debate and healthy talks and try to reach a sort of an agreement in a centre. Whereas what tends to happen is when we stop talking, these two sides can come further apart, and it can devolve into civil unrest or perhaps even a civil war.
So, in a way, the persona or the ego acts as a vantage point of either polarity, and it often likes to swing to one side.
Yes.
Of the polarity.
It's safety.
Why do you think that the ego persona prefers to be at one extreme or the other rather than being in a healthy balance?
It depends on where the society is going. Because if the society is going in a particular direction, people tend to go for, like you say, safety in numbers. We are deep down herd animals, and we would herd together for safety. So this is why one of the biggest fears of a person would be to get banished from the village, or
Mm.
to be disowned, or to become a scapegoat of some sorts. So this is why it's a deep fear to let go of this part of ourselves. And I'd always look at the ego and the personas. The ego is the sense of self. This is who we believe we are.
Mm.
But then the persona is what we show to the world itself. So the persona is like
the mask.
It's the visible part of the ego.
Okay, so it's like the mask, basically.
Like the mask,
So would you say that the ego is like the mannequin, and the persona is like the mask?
Yes, yeah. But the ego is the sense of self. So this is who a person thinks they are. However, as we develop an ego, we also develop a shadow as a compensation. So this is why the ego is also only partially true. It's not a full reflection of who we are. A full reflection of who we are would include all parts, including the shadowy parts.
Do you believe that we have an inherent sense of personal quality, like individual quality, that is beyond the ego?
Yeah. I think we are born with this potential. However, we never realise the potential because early on we start agreeing to be a persona.
Which is a slave almost to societal influence.
Pretty much, yeah. And then, but this is at first we're going to adopt a persona similar to our parents because that's our first social group is within the family. And the last thing we want to do is get kicked out of the family. So some things, some of the behaviours that we let go of would be representative of this potential.
So it's interesting, isn't it, how people take on these different personas, and the majority of people that you see when you walk down the street are just completely possessed by these different personas, and like just basically, to fit in to society.
Yes.
But society itself is sick.
Society is very sick.
So if you're wearing a persona to fit into the society, you're also sick.
Of course. So, but see, these structures are important to keep structure and coherence within the society. But we have to know when we've gone too far. We have to know when it's like the society may be going to a place that may not be good for us, or it may not be good for the whole. That's the difficult part. Like we've seen over recent years, we've actually been obviously worldwide involved in a massive event where, a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense, and trying to make sense of it. The only way I can make sense of it is the fact that people are in behavioural habits. They're not aware that they are acting out the persona, so they just keep going and keep going and keep going. There doesn't seem to be any sort of stop, and it's because another interest that we've both got is patterns. Everything in society operates through a pattern. So sometimes because we're deeply embedded into patterns, sometimes it's not apparent our behaviour is going in a bad direction until it's too late.
So in a way, we need our opposite.
We do need our opposite.
It's the same with like the principle with like everything, with like electrical circuits. Positive and negatively charged electrons. Like every single like thing that operates, within our universe, within the knowable universe, has its opposite.
Everything has to have its opposites.
And if it didn't, then like you say, it would just run. It would, like, if one extreme didn't have its opposite, then it would just go completely to the extreme until it completely destroyed everything.
It would collapse.
It would collapse.
It would collapse in on itself. So you could say there's an overarching energy that divides itself into two forces. And these two forces play out in loads of different ways. To think about some of the opposites that we may be thinking about. There's infinite and finite. There is a feminine, masculine. There's light and dark. There's left and right. There's up and down. But each one gives each other. It gives the other meaning. So we need them to give each other meaning. So we wouldn't even know what was good if we didn't experience what was bad.
Like its opposite, like, is a reflection basically of, like, it's like an inversion, an inverted reflection of the opposite, isn't it?
You can't have yin without yang. So even if you think about this, so I work with people quite often, and we're discussing really negative, what you consider negative emotions. I don't consider them negative. I just consider them other emotions, like resentment. So a lot of people are shocked to find out that a lot of their strongest resentments are held for people they love the most.
Mm.
And when I explain to them, I say, well, no, if you have created a lot of love for a person, resentment is going to be the compensation.
Yeah.
And the resentment's not going to always be present. However, it will be when you go into your shadow.
Yeah. So the thing is, though, if you like broke that down, like a resentment towards somebody, there was usually like resentment would come like where there was some disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, like something someone didn't meet our expectations.
Always.
So
expectations are also a prison.
Yeah. Oh, expectations are like the cause of pretty much all like patterns, essentially, aren't they? Do you know, because like, and it's something that we like deep down is just like constantly doing, expecting things.
Yeah, we expect things of ourselves and other people, and then expectations. It's very, very small amount of time that they've ever been met.
Yeah.
Think about when we used to go on a night out. If you go on like a spontaneous night out, you normally have one of the best nights of your life. But if you've planned a night out for 3 or 4 months, and then you've got your WhatsApp group, you're talking about you're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then you get to the night and it's a complete flop. This is because we put too much expectations.
100%. Like I always do that. Like when it comes to like going on a holiday or when I'm doing something that like I should really be feeling excited about. Like I try and withhold that excitement for as long as possible, just in case I'm dissatisfied with how it goes. Like because then at least you can never get to that point of unhappiness about something because you're not expecting too much from it.
No.
I mean, it's hard sometimes if you're really looking forward to something. You know, it's hard not to. But I think I was always questioning the reason why I did that. Why I actually chose not to get too worked up about or excited about certain things.
Because it's never going to meet your expectations.
Exactly.
Spontaneity and novelty is much more enjoyable.
But the thing is as well, like spontaneity, joy, and the sort of like positive feelings that you expect when you go to do a thing that you perhaps enjoy. You can only do that when you're in the present moment.
You can,
So, like, spontaneity is completely present moment, isn't it? Now, if you put an expectation on it, you're projecting something onto that present moment, and then when that present moment is not what you perceived it to be or expected it to be, then you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and unhappiness.
But the reason why we would sometimes, even though we wouldn't prefer this result, the reason why the negative is the default to go to is because as we developed and adapted through nature, negativity would have been the default because negative animals would have stayed alive.
It's like sort of survival, fight or flight.
If you think the worst, you're more likely to survive over animals that don't. So you can think about it that way. So that's why it actually takes work to go to the positive. And
it does.
And then if we've been brought up in a relatively it was the environment was negative a lot of the time. Well, to go to the negative feels comfortable.
Easier.
Yeah, easier and comfortable. So that's sometimes the comfort zone.
The thing is, it's I've got this tattooed on my leg. Is the pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and it is, isn't it?
It is optional.
It's completely a choice. Like I was reading something today, like a study that was done on thoughts, and that we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day.
60 to 80,000 a day,
and 80% of those thoughts are negative. And 95% of those thoughts are worries. And there's another study that was done on this that shown that I don't know exactly the percentage, but there was quite a considerable percentage of that. I think it was like really, really high percentage that the worries actually never, like very rarely ever come true.
No, they very, very, very.
And even the ones that in the study that did come true, that person found that it was nowhere near as bad as what they thought it was going to be.
Not as bad as what the
and actually they learned a lot from it.
Yes.
So like basically,
Yeah.
like most of the things that are going through your head are like repetitive thoughts that are essentially coming from like patterns within the subconscious mind that more than likely don't even belong to us anyway.
Well, remember, they belong to ego and persona, and because the ego and the persona is developed from society, well, we're taking on a lot of the worries of the society. And then you see the way the society does worry. The society, people of society like to watch the news, and the news, it's very rarely good news. Very rarely. It's always talking about this war or that murder or, things along those lines. It's never positive. But people are addicted to watching the news to confirm or affirm these negative thoughts and worries.
The thing is, our brain is like such an amazing computer, and how we learn, it's just mind blowing to think about how impressive the brain is at learning things. But it's also like very susceptible and doesn't have much of a filter. I mean, we're not like brought up to filter out like things that aren't great for the brain, like things that, negativity and things like that. It's not even something that we're like taught to, choose not to absorb.
No, of course not.
But like, using that example of the news, when you kind of like become more conscious within yourself, you can kind of feel almost, I don't know if you can agree, but you can kind of feel when information that's coming is not.
It's not true.
It's not true.
So I believe the news doesn't give us news. I believe it's shaping our perceptions, which is why a lot of what it reports is distorted or untrue or half true, and it's to create this distortion and create this false sense of reality. Because I remember, so we think about the news cycle of 2020 was not a reflection of what was happening in reality. It wasn't a reflection. And a lot of people would have took on what the news was saying during that time period and acted out as if that was real. However, I was hearing news about this, that, and the other, but in reality, I couldn't see any evidence of it. So it's. I mean, I'm not really big on watching news anyway, but that really confirmed to me why I don't watch it. It's trying to make me perceive reality in a particular way, and we know it's controlled by a small group of individuals. Let's have it right. They can't be trusted. So
well, the thing is, I don't trust anybody that doesn't tell the truth.
I don't.
And even a half truth is still a not a truth.
No.
Do you know what I mean? I think that a half truth is even more dangerous than an outright lie.
I would say because it's more deceptive.
Yeah, it is.
Right? So I've actually been doing I've done a lot of reading on this recently. Right, how there's 3 different types. What people consider 3 different types of truth. So you've got objective truth. This is actual reality.
This is a table.
This is a table. Yeah. Actually,
in our reality.
In our reality.
You're always going to get the clever clogs that's going to go. But actually, it's a vibrating atoms.
Yes.
And actually, it's not reality. But this is the thing, is what I find with like spirituality. Like, for example, people that are in this, it's like, oh, everything is illusion. Oh, come on.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
At one level of analysis, yes.
But in our objective reality, like this,
yes,
that's an object.
Yes.
That's real.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the objective truth. Sorry. Carry on.
No, it's okay. So we've got the objective truth, which is actual reality. We've got subjective truth, which is someone's perception of reality. And then you have normative truth, which is a group's perception of reality.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, a subjective idea of reality is hijacked by a normative truth. So our group believes this. So if you're within our group, you must also believe this. And then perceptions, what is there, 8 billion people on the planet? And each person believes that their perception of reality is the truth. Whereas objective reality is actual truth. And I'm not arrogant enough to think that I live in actual objective reality. However, I'd like to think I'm trying to get as close to as possible.
Yeah.
Because I understand that to live in truth, it's not just a word. It's we've talked about this. It's a state of consciousness.
Yes.
And if we get taken out of truth, into if we go too far away from that, because truth is the center.
Yes.
And if we go too far out of that center, it's where we get taken. And once we've lost a grip on reality,
yes, objective.
Yes.
Yeah,
once we've lost a grip on that reality, it's like, how do we find our way back?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and that's like the essence really of like grounding in spirituality is like being in the objective reality that we're in, you know, like Earth, we're here.
Yes.
We are here. And I think that, you know, I've got into the debates about objective truth before with people, and it's like, well, you know, truth is just subjective, like, and I'm like, it's not. It's not. That's because your head's in the clouds, mate.
Yes.
You know, which, you know, fair enough, you know, we don't know how many different realms of existence there are. We haven't got a clue, but what we do know while we're in this physical body is that we have a physical body. That's an objective truth.
Yes.
We are our own awareness in a physical body.
Yes.
Experiencing things in this objective reality that are objects and real. It's the same with, like, you know, there could be two people outside having a fight in the street, right? We look outside the top window here. Just get a vague view about what happened. Now, the subjective truth would be, oh, I seen this fella come over and, you know, start this altercation. But we don't know
what happened before.
We don't know what happened before.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So that's the difference, isn't it? Whereas like the objective truth is actually what happened.
Yes.
The actual fact of what happened.
Yes.
But the subjective truth is basically what someone else has seen.
And both sides of that fight would have had their own perceptions of the reality.
That's the perceptive.
Yeah, that's their own perceptions.
Yeah.
And then the truth would be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the thing is, you know, you're right about what you're saying. It's like to when you're in your objective truth, you're grounded and you're present, and you can be very hard to manipulate.
Very hard to manipulate.
The thing is once you start taking that step away from the objective truth, that's when things can get a little bit, you know, scary and like, and people, you know, if people are, you know, I'm not saying, you know, things that there's people out there trying to manipulate us or not. No. But what I'm saying is that if we are away from the objective truth, it's so much easier to manipulate you, because to manipulate someone is to take them away from reality. It's the same as, like, you know, like gaslighting. Like the actual term gaslighting comes from, like, the film. There was a film, wasn't there? And in the film there was somebody that, like, you know, he was manipulating his wife, and he was like turning the lights on and off, and then making her believe that it was happening, not, you know, it wasn't happening.
Yes.
So that's like the start, isn't it, of like being manipulated, and eventually, like, you know.
I watched a clip. I'd seen a clip come on to Instagram the other day, right, and it was like the ultimate meaning of gaslighting. And a woman walked in the bedroom, and a fella is in bed with another woman, and the woman went in and she said, "Who's the other woman?" And the man just started saying, "What other woman?" And basically, as she's asking him and he's denying over and over again, the woman's getting dressed, the man's getting dressed, the other woman walks out of the room, and their wife's still going on asking him, "Well, who's the other woman? What other woman? That the other woman that was here before. Which other woman? Where was she? Where does she now?"
Exactly.
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But then if we let go of that truth and we allow the society to dictate to us what truth is, well, look at North Korea. That's an ultimate example of where you can go if you let go of truth. Because at some point, North Korea may have lived in some form of truth, or however they've been in a very, very heavy dictatorship for a long time.
It's essentially a huge cult, isn't it?
It's a huge cult,
isn't it?
Well, the word culture means your cult.
Yeah,
that's what the word culture means. Where you could argue that all the different groups that we belong to or have belonged to are also cults.
Yeah,
because I remember when I first started to do work on myself. I mean, I used to enjoy watching Liverpool matches. I'd go to the odd match with a friend of mine, and I just remember doing a massive dose of mushrooms. And this dose of mushrooms really changed me. It took me about 5 or 6 months to really integrate and put myself back together. But I remember a couple of weeks afterwards, I was sat in a Liverpool match and watching, and I had no interest. The interest had gone, and now I'm aware that the pattern that was that acted out at the Liverpool matches was gone. That pattern had just gone and completely dissolved. And I was actually sat there thinking, like, imagine all this energy was put into something useful. And and it was just gone. And then, but I realised all the other identities that were part of my persona, to be a Scouser, to be an Englishman, to be a European, to be an atheist, these were all also, these are false. I understand why they need to be there, because we need structure, because without structure we're in chaos.
Yes.
However, I also know it's not right for me to over-identify with these identities, because they're only a partial reflection of who we are.
Yeah, and they're a house of cards.
They're a house of cards.
Any illusionary identity
always
comes crashing down at some point.
Always.
Like, you look at history, like every single like cult that was ever, or kingdom or anything that's ever been created on, like, illusions or belief systems, has always, had a terrible ending.
Always every time, because it goes through the stage of death rebirth, doesn't it? Yeah, if you can't rebirth a society or a civilization, then it's going to go. It always goes the same way.
Yeah. It's really interesting, that, because like, people will quite oftentimes change their identity. Which is quite interesting. But the thing is if you are to, let go of a particular identity, then, or this particular identity comes, crashing down, it can often leave like a huge, like, void.
Of course.
Within the self.
I've
been there a few times before, when I thought that,
you broke everything.
I thought I was on the right track, and then like something's just come along and just completely completely, and just left me feeling quite empty. And multiple times I've been there and thinking, who am I? Every time I try and like be one of these sort of, personas that like tries to fit into society, it doesn't last. And I think it takes quite a lot of, to sustain an illusion. It takes quite a lot of energy. It
takes a lot of energy
to do it. And I think it's the same with like, people that, may have like big egos, for example, or like what's typically known as a big ego. Like, that persona needs to be fueled by something. And it's interesting that like people who are more like leaning to sort of like the superior, like guru celebrity type status, require like fans, almost like require people that are going to blow up their image, because it's false. It's not real,
because it's an inflation, and at the extreme end of one of these inflations is possession by an archetype. So I think obviously we've had bits of experience with this. I don't know how many different people I've met over the last few years. I've met 3 people who thought they were reincarnations of Mary Magdalene. I've met a couple of people who thought they were Jesus. I remember this proper lunatic who thought he was Saint Germain. And I never understood at the time why these sorts of people, I mean, for decades they've filled up like hospitals, mental hospitals, haven't they? And it was like trying to figure out, what is going on there? Why do they think they are this long dead saint or long dead religious figure? And it's because the archetype that they've been possessed by has had nothing, and hasn't had other archetypes to balance it out. For example, if you think of, say, a dictator like a Stalin, so Stalin would have been possessed by an archetype, like, let's just say, a negative masculine archetype, and he wouldn't have had any feminine archetype to balance that out. So it became very, very sort of tyrannical, very, very controlling, very, very paranoid, or very, very deceptive. Just so many like evil qualities going on there, and it's because he didn't have any other archetypes to balance out. Whereas it should be a case of, we can't become an archetype. The archetypes make up structures within our psyche, and we tap into the energies of these archetypes. But I liken it to consciousness as like a table. So at the table of consciousness, you have to have different parts, and these different parts have to be balanced out by other parts.
Yeah.
And if one part gets too much power, like a Stalin, it will set up a dictatorship in the person's mind, and the person will become very, very one-sided. Yeah.
So it needs that opposite to sort of balance it out.
Always need the opposite. So for people like ourselves, right? I obviously I'm a male. I really like the masculine part of myself. However, I wouldn't be able to do this job if I didn't make contact with the feminine part of myself, which is creative, instinctive, intuitive, emotional, empathetic. So I'd need that, because if I'm going to be, say, trying to help people through emotional problems, well, I've got to be empathetic. I've got to be able to sort of put myself in their shoes. However, I also can't be too emotional, because I won't then feel safe to be around. So I need to have that presence as well as the emotion that balance each other out, and then it works really well for the job.
Yeah. And I think that's what is kind of lacking in society, is that there is very rarely that balance, and I think that it does start within, like if you do actually, like, excuse the pun, Michael Jackson, but like, if you want to make the world a better place, then you've got
the man in the mirror.
Yeah, the man in the mirror. It's brilliant, because you have actually got to find that harmony within yourself and find the balance of masculine and feminine. Obviously, if you're a man, you're going to have more masculine energy than feminine energy. But I think that, at the minute, there is quite a distortion around the truth when it comes to masculine and feminine energies. Like, I think that, and also like with, men and women as well, like because we can't, objective truth. Well, come back to this again. Is fundamental to our sanity.
It is.
And we are born with either an X or Y chromosomes. So on a scientific, on objective reality, grounded reality, biological facts and science that fit within our current paradigm, in this physical body. And we're either male or female. Now, I have got nothing against anybody that wants to, who has different preferences, like with what it is that they like. And what it is that they do in their private life is completely up to them. But it gets a little bit tricky, doesn't it, when there's like, men can have periods. That's when it's like, well, hang on, that's not true.
That's not true.
And I think that this is where we talk about, left and right imbalances, and like sort of the liberal left kind of, like, oh, anything goes kind of, mentality. I would class myself as a liberal person, because I like freedom. But within the constraint and channel, so to speak, of truth.
It has to be. It has to be in regards to truth. It has to be.
Clarity and truth around it. Freedom of expression, things like that. I'm totally all for that. Like, but then when it comes to like, objective truth, that also, I think that objective truth needs to be the foundation of everything.
I do.
Because what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? If we kind of don't resist that.
It goes to places that people don't want to go. So it comes back to places like Nazi Germany. So the Germans were convinced that Jewish people were dirty, so they collectively projected onto them. However, it wasn't true. And it's where you can go when you go out of truth. It's very, very, very dangerous. And then, there's objective reality, biological reality, and then there is the ideas that we carry inside our heads. So I actually watched the video yesterday, and it was let's just call it a crazy-eyed lady complaining that her son, who identifies as a cat, had gone to school, and when he was sat there licking his paws, the teacher had asked him to stop because he was distracting the rest of the class. So is the lad a cat? No, it's an idea going on in his or his parents' head. if people choose to validate who may be his friends, all they can do. However, they can't expect society as a whole to validate things that aren't true.
Because it's like, where does that stop?
Where does it stop?
Can't just accept one thing and say, well, where? I mean, it's like, where does the line? Where is the line? There has to be a line. It's that the borders and structure.
Yes.
There has to be structure, but the structure has to be based in the truth, I believe. To create a solid society and positive, structure for the future of humanity, there has to be like this. There has to be truth. It has to be based on the truth.
Here's the truth. The truth is, all religious and political groups have dark and light in them. Every single one. So, Christianity, a lot of people, people who are atheists, they don't like religion. They completely 100% oppose it. And then you've got people who would 100% oppose some of these left or right-wing political groups. However, I prefer to look into them and find within each group what's truth, what's real, and also what's useful and necessary. Yeah. So you see how you can agree that with a lot of these political groups, there's a lot of necessity to what they have done. However, we should also be able to point out when there's shadow and when there's darkness and when there's things that aren't true. We should be able to. But it seems that if we try to criticise one thing from within a group, we oppose the whole thing. Whereas that's where the problem lies. Whereas you can say, like I say, you can probably agree with me. If you look within left and right wing political groups, you can find a lot of good. Yes. You can also find a lot of darkness.
Yes.
But then if you look into like religions such as Christianity, Judaism, Islam, you can find a lot of truth. You can find a lot of useful things. Society wouldn't be what it was without them. However, we've got to be able to point out the dark parts as well. Yeah. Even better, the group and members of the groups themselves should be have an awareness of the dark parts within their group. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no self-awareness at all, and everything ends up projected outwards onto some opposite.
Well, it's usually the case when there's denial of because you could get any of these sort of political party people or from either side, and you can guarantee that they're not going to accept them parts of themselves that we're talking about.
Of course, of course not. Why would they?
Yeah,
why would they when it's easier to project it outwards onto your opposite?
And the thing is that it creates the enemy, doesn't it?
It creates the enemy.
So this is where we're going wrong, isn't it?
It is.
I think that to have a coherent kind of government structure,
yes,
there has to be this willingness to sort of accept, the shadows of itself.
It has to be. A shadow and light is in everything.
Yeah. But so the thing is that if a person was to be in balance fully, and there was no extreme on either side, is that possible?
Who knows? Because I don't think we've ever seen it. I mean, I know we've probably had small flashes of being in the centre. Yeah. However, we never stay there. Yeah. The same way we can have small flashes of being expanded and sort of feeling as if we're a part of something much bigger and more intelligent, but we always have to be reduced back down to our form.
I think that's just life, isn't it? That's life, sort of cyclical nature of death and rebirth, and
yes.
It's
that's
you can
one constant.
You can have moments of where you feel really good,
yes,
and really clear, and everything kind of makes sense.
Yes.
I'm sure that people listening can relate to that, where they're like, oh, everything's great, wow. And then all of a sudden, it's everything's dull again, and then you forgot all your wisdom, and you're just you're struggling to get by, and things are going wrong, and it's what is the advice for people then? Do you think that what do you think people could take away from this conversation then, from in regards to how to not be in such a polarized state, and how to sort of make themselves, I don't know, be more peace within themselves?
I believe that because we are all we're all connected to that infinite consciousness, and I believe that we're all part of infinite consciousness with the individual expressions of it having a finite experience. So I think it's remembering the fact that we are connected to some form of higher intelligence. However, we're still scratching monkeys at the same time, because I think it is what it is. It is. It is what it is because we're still mammals, and yes, we do have flashes of expansion into the consciousness. However, we always come back down. We always have to come back down into this form, and I think it's because a lot of people don't want to accept the fact that we have instincts we've got no control over, or emotions we have no control over. However, it's truth. It part of the human experience is to have these negative emotions and these negative experiences. I think it's more about rather than believing that we're suffering because we live in a cruel, dark world, but we live through suffering because the universe is trying to make us stronger in some way. Yeah, because that's what I always feel. Because now that I don't adopt the victim mindset, which I used to.
Yeah,
but I've realised that the victim mindset I was adopting was completely inappropriate. So I try to how can I put it? I don't like to claim any victim status. I try to sort of be a victor if I can, and when challenges come, I like to think that I approach them in a much stronger way now, rather than trying to hide or suppress or push things down.
Yeah, one thing that I've found about the universe is that I know, well, the universe, or our subjective experience of what happens within our life and how we see the world is a complete reflection of what we believe, our beliefs. I think that whether it's the objective truth or not, the way that we experience things is totally our reality. And that's how that's the lens that we see the world. And I think if you identify with any kind of victim mentality, then you're always going to create a problem for yourself. It's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? We have these beliefs, and whatever it is that we believe, we kind of create. And in a way, you hear these motivational speakers, Tony Robbins, and that have these really positive mindsets, and they do quite well for themselves, just by having changing the way that they believe about things. Now, to believe that you are a victim, you're essentially identifying with that, and I think that
that's the part that you'll play.
I think that you can actually be whoever you want to be, really.
Yes.
If you put your mind to it, you could actually be whoever you wanted to be.
You've got to feed your subconscious with the right thought patterns, and then if that becomes the inner narrative is a more positive inner narrative, well, that's the experience that you're going to have, because your mind will filter reality for that experience then. Because the mind does, it filters reality for that. Because you could almost say the ego itself, to come back to the ego, the ego is a filter. The ego filters reality for what we identify as our identity.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
So it's always going to feed into that, and everyone will be able to relate to the fact that life really does repeat itself. We keep on meeting the same patterns over and over and over until we develop more awareness of the pattern.
And it's interesting that you talk about the universe sort of wanting to what was the word?
Make
you stronger. I totally believe that, and
it's an initiation.
It doesn't want. It's almost like the universe doesn't want us to be in these repeating cycles. It's like it's almost like we're primed for growth.
Yes.
And the lessons that we tend to get when we go around the same cycles, more than a few times, tend to get harder and harder and harder until you finally get it. And then in the end, it's like this huge universal cosmic slap around the face of truth that can leave you feeling completely humbled and on your knees and okay, I can see it, the truth now.
I remember I used to be really good at getting sacked from jobs, really good at it, right? But I always had an excuse. It was the chef was this, or the manager was this, the manager was that. when I started doing work on myself and I took a little look about this time period in my life, and I realised every single time I was sacked, it was always me. However, I just could not see that in the past. Whereas now I realise that because of the patterns that are running in my subconscious, I'm basically 100% responsible for everything that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And then I think that acceptance of that responsibility is the ultimate way to change.
Denial is like just one of those things that just keeps you stuck.
Always, mate.
And
always.
it can be painful sometimes, can't it? When you're in denial and then something comes around and then proves you wrong. I think that's one of the things that the ego really doesn't like. It's being wrong. Like, I think it would be quite hard. Like, even just saying it now, like, I can feel like this. Like,
I hate it.
Yeah. It's like this squirming, like, no, just don't want to be wrong.
I'm actually, I like a lot of the time to be wrong. So I now see a conversation between two people as it's not me or the other person trying to win the conversation. It's about, okay, let's have a discussion and let's see if between us we can find our way to the truth in the middle. That's probably, I believe, is more important because I think then it makes every day a learning experience.
And I think that it's also a skill to sort of accept other people's reality.
Of course,
like because at the end of the day, what we experience as the truth is our state of consciousness. Now, it can be tricky, like to, especially if like there's some kind of conflict between you and somebody else, is accepting their truth as well.
Of course,
like. Even though like it is totally subjective, your experience and their experience, it's very, you're two completely different people. It's very rare that subjective experience is going to be the same.
Very rare.
And
very rare.
That can also be quite tricky, can't it, to like accept that other people's opinions are different to yours.
Of course.
I think that can be a hard one, especially if there's been some kind of confrontation or conflict in that. Like,
what do? They take opposite poles.
Yeah,
because then it becomes not about finding truth, it becomes about taking opposition. And
it's a power struggle, isn't it?
It's more of a power struggle, then. But remember, we're still deeply embedded in the patterns of nature. So that power struggle is part of dominance. It's part of let's just say the dominance struggle within the animal kingdom plays out in the human kingdom as well. People just don't believe that it's there.
Yeah.
So it could be an example of, see the way they'd like to enforce equality. I believe that equality could only ever really truly happen as if enough people work on themselves within. Because if not, if you try to force it from without, well, how do you change the internal patterns? How do you change the internal dynamics of what's going on? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Because you can't force equality because people are made up differently, and some people within the society that we're in now are more useful than others. Let's have it right. And I don't believe that I should be in a higher place in a hierarchy than someone who's more competent than me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
But this is also the thing with the ego, isn't it? It has to be either inferior or superior. It's not very happy like being like, oh, everyone's equal. It doesn't. I mean, that thought of everyone being equal is kind of like alien, isn't it, to the ego?
I'd say in certain respects we should be equal. Yeah. But there's other respects, like the structures of society, where you have to have some form of hierarchy. It just shouldn't go to too big extremes. Yeah. So you shouldn't want two extremes of people feeling low, and two extremes of people being high. Yes. You want to sort of oscillate still between the middle. Yeah. But there's just not massive differences. It's similar to because then you're going to live in a bipolar society. Yeah. Whereas within yourself, if you want balance within yourself, or you don't want your oscillations like this. Yes. You want them like this. Yeah. So you're going to go up and down. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be
not
too
as
extreme.
Much. Yeah.
So it's the same with the society. You're still going to have people who are going to be more competent than others. But you hope that with the right conversations, then you can sort of bring more of a balance to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the fights for equality, well, I can think of one example where kind of it was completely imbalanced, and that's the sort of feminism movement, and but fair enough, women's rights completely like agree
Yeah.
with that. But like, you know, the rise of feminism was like complete opposite. It was like the rise of toxic masculinity in women.
Yeah.
Like the sort of like vengeance and like anger and
remember, to begin with, it would have been a reasonably honourable movement, with really honourable goals.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas now, because it's gained power, it's become a monster.
Yeah.
The same as a lot of the other political groups, they always become a monster, and it's because I believe that they don't leave any room for rebirth. So it could be it could be like, okay, well, we've gone a bit far in this direction now. Maybe we should have another look at this. There isn't a lot of humility when it comes to these different groups, but very, very necessary, I believe. But it has to also address its own shadow. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because it has become more about hating men rather than empowering women.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas we should all be empowered. But then again, it was still another. Let's just say it's another rich man's trick, because what seems to have happened is that people, the ruling classes, have used these different groups and setups to divide normal people from each other. Which you can say it's genius.
Divide and conquer. It tried and tested.
Divide and conquer is tried and
since
tested.
the beginning of civilizations.
Yes.
You know, in the the last 10,000 years.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
It divide and conquer. It's just always been the main tactic, isn't it?
So I think for us as individuals, see, they use these groups to make us collectively project, like blanket project onto whole groups of people. However, when you meet a person, an individual from these groups, well, a lot of the time this individual really endears themselves to you.
Yeah.
So then that changes your opinion of the whole group. Like, for example, imagine me and you would never met, say, like someone who's a Muslim.
Yeah.
Right. And we believe that the news about, the terrorism, suicide bombing, etc., etc. When I've met hundreds of Muslims and I've never met one I didn't like. So, but I've got to know them on an individual level. So now I don't have that blanket projection, because I've got to know people on an individual level. So I think a lot of the time it's the collective projection, which is the dangerous one. When it's each individual, I believe, should be given a chance for you to get to know them on a personal level, an individual level. Yeah. Rather than just projection is always going to happen, regardless if people try not to.
It's like judgments, isn't it?
Well, it's
always going to
projection. You could say is the first impression.
Yeah.
And you could say the reason why it's developed is it's an adaptation. So if you're walking down the street and you see 3 kids walking towards you in black trackies, your immediate thought is going to be they could be potentially dangerous. You may cross over the other side of the road. But them 3 kids could be in uni. You could just wear them trackies because you like them. But you immediately project onto them. However, if they were dangerous, then that projection could have kept you safe. So you can see how it works. Yeah. And then projection would have come originally. Everyone thinks it's just about race or something like that. But imagine you've got a tribe in Liverpool, a tribe in Manchester back in the day, never seeing each other. They got the same colour, slightly different facial shape. You see them, you're going to immediately project onto that's the other. That's going to be the first impression. And if you don't get to know that person, that's going to be the impression that you keep.
Yeah. I suppose it goes back to like tribes, doesn't it? Really, like back in the day, it's always been like that, hasn't it?
So the projection's always going to be the first impression. However, we should then always address that first impression. So if we find ourselves immediately projecting and judging something onto somebody, then that's when we've got to look at ourselves and think like, okay, am I right in these judgments? So you question. The projection's always going to happen. And all these people, the people that are always going on about these different subjects, well, they are also projecting. And to deny that they are part of it is completely ridiculous, because sometimes people shouting the loudest are the ones who've got the biggest problem. Yeah. So it should be, we are always going to project. We're always going to judge. However, we've got to really question those projections and judgments when
Yeah. So, just to wrap this conversation up, I've noticed recently, especially, it's accelerating like over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like the rise in people, having conversations like this, having, more awareness about their patterns and doing, honest inner work on themselves. There's a lot more. But there's also the opposite as well. There's also a lot of people who are like bypassing it and, thinking that, we talk about the ones that, just, rubbing the crystals and things, things and think that that's going to get rid of the problems. But, we know very well that it comes from doing deep, honest inner work on yourself.
It's a good start.
It's a good start.
Yeah. It's a good start. However, it has to then become about really deep work on yourself, because we're trying to undo thousands of years of conditioning. It's not something that can just be done overnight in one ceremony. It's something that takes work each and every day. I'd say.
I believe that we are in a very, very interesting times, because like I say, I've probably only been observing this, and realistically, it's probably people have only been doing work on themselves in this way probably for the last 10 years. That's like a drop of water in the ocean of time.
That's 3.5 billion years. So the 3.5 billion years of cellular development, and it's just these last 10 years that we've experienced it. So
it's like literally we're at this point where we're starting to experience ourselves. Whereas like in the times before that, we were just basically cogs in the machine. Like all them years before, people were just unconsciously repeating the same patterns.
Of course.
And now all of a sudden we're at this point now where we can see what we're doing. And we're all kind of like, I'm not say all of us, but quite a lot of, people now are stepping onto this wave of doing work on themselves. So my question is to you before we finish is, do you see a positive outlook for humanity, or a pessimistic, an optimistic or pessimistic?
So I believe it's going to go to a positive place. However, I have reconciled myself with, I'm going to go with it regardless of where it goes. Regardless of what way what direction it goes in, because it is a bit of a crossroads.
Yes.
Right? And you can believe that it'll probably go like what would you call it? It's keeping you on the edge of your seat.
Yes.
Right? And it'll go right to the wire. I think it'll go to a really positive place eventually. However, I've actually reconciled myself with either. Yeah, with either.
That's acceptance.
Yeah, no, that's
food for you.
That's what I tried to do. I tried to find acceptance regardless, because like my original background of I started working on myself in say 2012 to get through my own issues. But I've always been an avid reader my whole life since a young child, and I've always had a massive interest in totalitarian dictatorships and books such as Orwell's 1984, Animal Farm, Almost to Catalonia, Road to Wigan Pier, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I've always been obsessed with these sort of like films, and obviously it's not the sort of society I'd like to live in. However, when you observe patterns going on outside, you can see how it could easily devolve into that sort of thing, i.e. the surveillance state, etc., etc. I really do believe it will all get dismantled. Well, not completely dismantled, but the parts that aren't really necessary or appropriate will be dismantled, and then we'll go to a better place. However, like I say, I've reconciled myself with either.
Yeah, me too.
I would sing, dance, and just have a good time if they put me in the gulag.
Yeah. or if there was apocalypse was nigh, we'd just party the night away until the end.
Party the night away, and I always said my favourite apocalypse would be a zombie one.
All right, Kev. Thanks very much. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Perfect.
What was that? Happy with that?
Brilliant.